welcome back to my channel. Today's video is a little bit unexpected. I had an entire video planned. Unfortunately, those plans fell through. So last week in my video, I planted a little bit of what I thought was going to be an Easter egg and showed you the horse trailer because I was supposed to be going to a horse show with my sister. And unfortunately, we had a heat wave roll back through Indiana and we ended up not attending that horse show. So we kind of had to roll with the punches and change things up a little bit. So instead of having a horse show themed vlog, we are going to do my summer top 10 reading list. These are going to be the top 10 books from all of the books I have read this summer. I'm kind of counting the summer coming to a close, even though I know I'm going to get hate for that because technically it's not fall until like the end of September. Kids are going back to school and I feel like we've gotten little hints of fall weather here and there. We're just gonna go ahead and make my top 10 summer hits reading list. First though, I want to share some content of different things I've done this summer that I've just thought were really cool. So go ahead and roll those clips. All right, now let's get into the top 10 list. All right, so coming in at number 10 is The Assassin's Blade by Miss Sarah J. Maas. So I ended up giving this book a 3 out of 5 stars. And I feel like when you initially hear that rating, you think I disliked this book. But for me, 3 stars just means the book did exactly what it was supposed to do. It was an average rating. Nothing was wrong with this book, but nothing screamed at me all at the same time. I read this book as number 3 in the series. So keep that in mind. I know there's a lot of debate on which order you should read this book. Some people say to read it first in the series. Some people say to read it third in the series. I chose to read it third. This book is actually 5 individual novellas all in one book. And I think that that's kind of why I didn't rate this higher than I did. I think sometimes I felt like I was being taken out of the story just because it was novellas. I feel like the novellas wouldn't allow me to fully immerse myself. Now, I will say, since I read it third, it did answer a lot of questions I had from the first 2 books, so I really did enjoy that. I think that this book helped you understand Selena's emotions for a lot of things, early traumas that she had to go through to make her who she is in the first 2 books. But I think it just came off a little more like episodes versus reading a book. And I just didn't really love that. But I did really enjoy this. And I'm glad I read it as the 3rd book. Only because, like I said, it did answer so many questions that I had. If you're someone who likes to have all the knowledge up front, I definitely recommend reading this first. But if you're someone who likes to kind of gather different questions and kind of want to be held in suspense a little bit, I would say read this third because you will get a lot of those questions answered and it will help a lot of those bells ring in your head. So the 9th book I want to talk about, I don't actually own a physical copy of, but that is The Honey Witch by Sydney Shields. I found myself really enjoying the cozy reads the last couple of months. So I don't know if that's just a genre I'm learning that I'm loving, or if that's just what I needed these last couple of months, which is how busy life has been. So The Honey Witch is all about Marigold, who comes to realize that she is actually a honey witch, and she goes to live with her grandmother, who helps her learn to embrace her powers and learn how to become an actual honey witch. Her grandmother does pass away and she is on her own, and she is the honey witch for her community. And what's really fun about this book is there is a romance element, There is definitely a little bit of a higher stakes portion of this book because you have someone called the Ash Witch who's trying to take over the Honey Witch's lands. So having that war element I think was really interesting and did make it a true fantasy book. Just a very slow moving book, and I do think that that is one of the things I didn't 100% love. I do feel like some parts were almost too slow. I did find the Honey Witch to be extremely atmospheric. I almost felt like there were times when I could smell the scenes that they were describing to me, and I do really like that Marigold allowed herself to truly find herself. If you just want something cozy, relatively lighthearted, but there are some stakes to it, I definitely say read the Honey Witch. And if I didn't already say it, I rated this 4 out of 5 stars. Book 8 is We Used to Live Here, and I actually read this during my Summerween reading vlog, and not really a plot twist. I still don't know how to pronounce this author's name, but this book is so popular that I feel like it doesn't need much of an explanation when it comes to who this author is. So this book is about Charlie and Evie, and they purchased a home that was really a deal that was probably too good to be true, and they are flipping this home. One day Evie is home alone and a family shows up on their doorstep, and the father says that he lived there and he wanted to show his family around the house and show them where he grew up. Instantly that gives Evie the heebie-jeebies, but she is 100% a people pleaser and she tells him to come on in, and then things just really fall apart from there. Weird things start happening and you can't 100% tell what the actual reality is because Evie starts to see things, but then she's trying to decide, wait, am I seeing things or is something paranormal happening? And that's a question that you have 100% all the way through this book. Even at the very end, you aren't really sure what happened at the end, and I think that that's what makes this book so unique. It leaves a lot up for the reader's interpretation, and I don't want to really say why because I do think it's a spoiler, but I will say you're trying to decide, is the house haunted or is Evie maybe struggling, or Eve maybe struggling with some sort of mental illness? I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. Coming in at number 7 was Not Quite Dead Yet by Holly Jackson. This book was a really fun read because I actually got it and read it right when it was released. I gave this a very strong 4 out of 5 stars. Before this summer, I was in a really tough place with thrillers. I was kind of getting bored with them, and I won't go on and on about that because I've mentioned that several times in different videos, but I just was not really ever in the mood for thrillers until these last couple. I think I'm back in my thriller phase of reading, and it makes me very excited for fall read. My issue initially with this was the first, I would say like 50% was pretty slow. I mean, things were happening, it just didn't have me on the edge of my seat to where I just wanted to continue reading this book. I did really enjoy the health element and literally the countdown of her life. So for those of you who don't know what this is about Jet, who was attacked on Halloween night, and she survives the attack itself, but when she gets to the hospital and they check her out, she finds out that she has an injury in her brain that's going to cause a brain aneurysm, and they think she only has about 7 days to live. So you're literally watching her for those 7 days try to solve her own murder. And once you get to about the 50 to maybe even 75% mark, this book really picks up. This is actually one of the better twists I've read in a very long time. I thought it was believable. Nothing that really happened in this book did I sit and think, okay, you're just writing that to write a twist. There were a lot of different things that were explored in this book. Like I said, a chronic diagnosis, there's a family business, there's family drama, there's friends who no longer are friends, who hate each other. There are people who were no longer friends that then became romantic interests. It's just all packed into this book, but in the best way possible. All right, book 6 puts us back on the Sarah J. Maas train, and that was Heir of Fire. I ended up giving Heir of Fire 4 out of 5 stars. I think where this book lost a point for me was just that there were some parts that were extremely slow. There were some parts that had absolutely no action. It was just people's thinking and what are they doing today? Like just some of that stuff that in a lot of books I don't mind, but in this one it just felt like, okay, let's like get on with it already. And I did think that that made for some very uneven pacing. Unfortunately, I feel like when a book is this chunky, if there are parts that just continue and continue and continue, it kind of makes me want to skim a little bit. And I truly feel like skimming inside of a fantasy or romantasy is so dangerous because you have to pay attention to every little bit of these books to know what's going on. And when a book is this chunky, like I said, when there are parts that just kind of drag on a little bit, that gets dangerous. For me, at least. However, I will say that there were some excellent parts to this book, and that's why I rated it 4 out of 5 stars. You see a lot more growth in Selena and her true identity. It's interesting. This book and a different book, the book I rated number 9, The Honey Witch, had a lot to do with self-discovery. I didn't realize that till literally right now. But you see her really grow into herself, and I won't spoil what I mean by self-identity because that is a huge part of this book specifically, and I don't want to give it away if you haven't read it. Another part of this book that I really enjoyed is you get a really deep dive into the witches and the witch culture that is in these books, and I really enjoyed that plot line. I think that, honestly, I think the witch and the witch dragon plot line that was seen in this book was honestly my favorite. Number 5 was Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies by Heather Fawcett. This is a book that, for whatever reason, I have never really been interested in reading. And when I went book shopping for my birthday, I saw it and I was like, okay, actually, I'm really intrigued. So this book is really fun because it is a cozy fantasy, but there is also a romance element, a rivals to lovers storyline, which is really fun. So this is obviously about Emily Wilde, and then her academic rival, what's his name, is Wendell Bambleby. So Emily is on an island, and I'm not going to try to pronounce the name of these places, but she is on an island, and she is there to work on literally her encyclopedia of fairies. And her academic rival Wendell shows up, and she is not happy about that. That's not something she's excited about, guys. She actually finds this man to be pretty insufferable. She does not like him. She thinks he's a liar. She finds all of his work to be discreditable. And we find out that Wendell actually has a really big secret he's been keeping. Now, I did not know this going into this book, but this 100% takes place in the Burr months. If you are someone who wants to read books in the season they take place in, keep that in mind when you pick this up. And I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars. Book 4 is Can't Spell Treason Without T by Rebecca Thorne. Guys, this is what I mean. I think I was just in a very strong cozy fantasy era this summer, because this is another one of those books that 100% is a cozy fantasy. So this book is about Raina and Chianthe, who are both very popular and well-known figures within their community. They hold very high-ranking positions, and they both choose to leave that lifestyle to go open a bookstore that also serves tea. There's actually a lot going on in this book, and you probably wouldn't expect it when you just hear a bookshop that owns tea. So there is an evil queen element. There are things that go wrong in this book. There are other little side mysteries happening. And I think what I really love about this book and what I've learned, the kind of storylines I enjoy, is there is a found family element to this. Raina and Chianthe, in the process of doing what they want to do, they find a community that absolutely loves and cherishes them. And I think that that's just something in books I'm learning I really love. And I rated it 4 out of 5 stars. To come into my top 3 books that I've read so far this summer. The first one is Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. This is a love story about Alexis, who is an ER doctor, and Daniel, who is just a carpenter in a very small town. And they meet in a very unlikely way, and the love story between these two is absolutely beautiful. These two main characters have undeniable chemistry, and the unfortunate part is they are both trying to fight that because they don't want to ruin the other person's life. This book also has the small town found family element because Alexis learns to love the community that this book mainly takes place in. I will say her family her parents specifically, are horrible. And you truly start to root for these characters and you want their romance to go the distance. And you have to read this. Like, you guys have to read this book. And I gave this book a 5 out of 5 stars. Coming in at number 2 is Magnolia Parks by Jessa Hastings. This is a book I have put off for the longest time reading because it got such mixed reviews. This is the year I've learned that just because a book gets a bad review on Goodreads does not mean that I'm also going to hate it. So this book, if you don't know, is the storyline of Magnolia Parks and BJ Ballantyne, and it is one of the most toxic books and lifestyles you could read about. If you just want to read a rich people drama where people just constantly are doing things to sabotage themselves or to sabotage their friendships and to do things that they know are just so wrong and just constant walking red flags, this is going to be the book for you. And this book ended on such a cliffhanger that I cannot wait to continue on in this series. I'm really sad I waited as long as I did to read this, so if you have not dug into the Magnolia Parks universe yet, it's one you have to read. And if you read Magnolia Parks and you find yourself not really loving it, I've heard that you have to read Daisy Hates, because you either love the Magnolia Parks storyline or you're gonna love the Daisy Hates storyline. So I'll be interested to see. Like, I really enjoyed this book, but am I gonna like Daisy's storyline even more? I have to know. So 5 out of 5 stars, highly recommend Magnolia Parks. So my number 1 read of the summer was the biggest surprise to me, and not the book that I thought when I started it would be the book that has stayed with me as long as it has. I don't currently own a physical copy of this book, but it's on my list of books that if I find this book at a good price, I'm going to buy it. I honestly might even just go to Barnes & Noble, buy the full price copy, just because I loved it that much. Tom Lake by Ann Patchett. Guys, this is a 5 out of 5 star book. And I do think that this book was the right book at the right time. So this book is about Laura, I can't remember if it's Laura or Lara, but she is telling the story of her early life when it comes to romance, when it comes to trying to be an actress. She's telling that story to her children, her daughters, during the 2020 pandemic. It was so elegant, and the book itself felt so quiet. There were so many powerful moments that happened in this book, but nothing that was so powerful that it got your adrenaline pumping. It just really spoke to my heart. This is a book that absolutely relied on those profound, really strong, quiet moments versus being a book that just had those crazy plot twists. And I find that usually those are the kinds of books that I love, the books that just have those totally outrageous things that happen. That did not happen in Tom Lake. Like I said, it was just so quiet, but the moments in the stories and the things that happened in this book just spoke to my heart in a way that I never thought possible. Even though this wasn't like a true memoir, because it wasn't somebody writing about their life, you felt like you were literally sitting and reading someone recount actual stories from their life, and they were doing it in the present time. And you were living almost vicariously through the 2 different timelines, because there would be chapters that were in present time where she's interacting with her family and her daughters, and you are on the cherry farm, you're watching them pick cherries and sit in the grass, and you can almost imagine being there. But then when she's talking about the stories in her past and at Tom Lake, you actually feel like you're there. You feel like you are at the cabin. You feel like you are walking through the struggles that Lara and her friends at the time had. And again, it's just something that I feel like almost anybody can relate to. A lot of people complain about how slow this book is and how literally nothing happens. And here's the thing, that is true. This book is slow. This book isn't going to have things like, the Magnolia Parks series or the Sarah J. Maas stuff. Like, there's not going to be moments of that book where you're thinking like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that just happened. You're just going to be reading it and thinking, oh my gosh, I can't believe that just happened, and I can't believe how strongly I related to that. and I listened to it on the audiobook. And guys, when you listen to the audiobook, it's unreal. I mean, it's Meryl Streep. So 5 out of 5 stars. Honestly, that's probably a 6-star book for me. And again, it's one that when I initially picked it up, it was just calling to me. For whatever reason, when I was looking through books I wanted to listen to, I was just looking for something easy to listen to while I was getting ready in the morning. And when I was scrolling through the list, for whatever reason, the cover just spoke to me. Keep in mind, it's a slow book, but I think if you read it at the right time, you are going to fall in love. All right, you guys, so we are at the end of this week's video. Thank you so much for tuning in with me this week. I hope you found a book on my top 10 list that interested you and that you might give a read. Please like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. I would really appreciate it, and we are slowly but surely growing this little community over here. And I look forward to next week's reading vlog, and until next time, I'll see you when I see you. Have a great rest of your day.